Welcome to Forensic Friday.
Where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all.
Is it me? Oh, maybe it's me. Hold on, maybe it's me. Yeah, it's me. Sorry.
It was you?
Anyway.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is take two. Work smarter, not harder. Sometimes we work harder, not smarter.
We're going to do take two because I think the first round, it was kind of a sad one.
It was a snoozer.
It was a snoozer, but I think my brain going into it was and is this.
Yeah.
Borderline gets a bad rap.
Yes.
And my empathy level for individuals who struggle with borderline, while they are super hard sometimes in therapy, my empathy level is super high because I can't imagine their brain. And so the first round, it was like a wah wah, this sad and whatever. So I'm going to start with my intention of why I'm doing this and why we're talking about this, and then we're going to dive in. So the intention for me sharing about borderline and helping people understand it more, similar to some of the things we've already done, right? Like gaslighting, the other terms that we've tackled, because people tend to overuse it. People tend to not have any idea what this means. They meet a difficult woman and they're like, she's borderline. And that's just not true. Right.
And we also don't label people. Sometimes it's a shortcut.
Yes.
It's a disorder like any other disorder. So-and-so has borderline personality disorder.
Yes. And so at the end of the day, the biggest thing that I want to get across is that these individuals are people. They are human beings who feel 100 times more than the average human.
Yeah.
And they feel all the feelings 100 times more in a day than the average human.
Yes.
And I just can't imagine your brain being on fire like that all the time.
Yeah, it's really hard to imagine what that's like. And I love the idea of having empathy because even though a disorder creates hard behaviors, right? Addiction is like this too. Or, maybe we hate cancer because of what cancer does to people. I'm all about hating borderline personality disorder as a disorder.
Yes.
It's terrible. It hurts people. It destroys families. It takes down organizations.
Yes.
It is wildly damaging, expensive to treat, difficult to treat, not hopeless to treat, but difficult.
Difficult.
And I really feel for someone who has this disorder, just like I would feel for somebody who has a significant chronic medical condition. Like it's just,
exactly.
It makes your life difficult. Yes. The behavior is nonsense.
Yes.
So hard. And it's a little bit wild. And that's why we're going to talk about it today. And we may use some examples and we may talk in a more casual way about how difficult the behavior is, but that doesn't change the fact that we love the people.
Right. Exactly.
Kind of hate the sin, love the sinner, like the evangelicals say. It's kind of like that. We can have an issue with borderline personality disorder and observe that the behaviors are really tough, but then also have empathy for the human being that has the disorder.
Exactly. So I'm going to run through a few of the symptoms that individuals with borderline personality disorder feel. Okay. Oftentimes this disorder gets mistaken for bipolar, right? Because it's a fluctuation of emotions. For borderline, their emotions change within minutes in a day.
Yeah, it can be pretty rapid.
Yes. So borderline symptoms can range from depression, an unstable sense of self, codependency, dependency in relationships, a lot of ruminating in their brain, really intense emotions. Again, I said earlier, they feel emotions 10 times more than the average human. I can't imagine that.
No, me neither.
And it's all of them, right? So joy too, like they feel the quote unquote more positive emotions that much more as well.
Almost in a manic kind of
Yeah,
way.
exactly.
You know, it's interesting, Nat. I wonder if one of the reasons, because you and I have talked about how borderline, we have a lot of compassion.
Hmm.
I wonder if part of why we have that is because we're both naturally pretty even keeled
Hmm.
people. Like it takes a lot. We're sassy. We can pop off with the best
Hmm.
of them in a funny way or whatever.
Hmm.
But we are very stable day to day. Like you and I don't go into the gutter for 3 weeks or anything like that. Like we're pretty steady.
Yeah.
I think that makes me even more aware because I value it so much that if I couldn't do that, how hard and vulnerable that would be.
Yes. And if you're in a relationship with that,
Yes. Yeah, both sides.
yeah, with family or whatever. People with borderline personality disorder have chaotic relationships, right? Their family members have a really hard time, intimate relationships. They might have a hard time keeping a job. They often get suicidal ideation and display self harming behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
right? The borderline can range from like those symptoms, right? Which is more common when you
Mm-hmm.
meet someone with borderline personality disorder, but it can also get to the intensity of experiencing paranoia,
Yeah.
delusional thinking, hallucinations, all of that,
Yeah.
right? So I think when it comes to those things, when I think of individuals on both sides who are borderline or who have borderline personality disorder, and then their family members, that's a roller coaster,
Oh, it really is.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the individual on the receiving end, if they don't know what they don't know, right? If they have no idea about this diagnosis, if they whatever, they're on the roller coaster with them,
Right.
right? So they're experiencing, obviously from a different perspective, all of those ups and downs.
Yeah.
They're in it with them and they have no idea how to set boundaries. And that is exactly what both sides of the spectrum need, right? Individuals who are in relationship with people who have borderline personality disorder, and then individuals who are diagnosed with it need boundaries as well
That's right.
because it keeps them both safe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought I don't like comparing people to animals because I think that's ridiculous. But when you really think about like if you have a new puppy
Hmm.
and you crate train a puppy, they feel safest in the crate, even if they love you, even if they want to be with you all the time. The containment of that and the predictability of that makes them feel super safe.
Hmm.
People are the same, whether you have a personality disorder or not.
Hmm.
We just really like to feel safe. We like to know that our surroundings are safe.
Yes.
And boundaries are one of the number one ways that we can establish that for ourselves.
Yeah. I always, whenever I teach boundaries, whether it's to individuals, couples, or groups, I talk about it as a fence,
Yes.
right? So if I have porous boundaries, it's basically like me hanging up a sheet around my home. It's there, you
Mhm.
can see it, it might have holes in it, right? But you can push right through it.
Yeah.
Right. So I try to set the boundary, but I don't hold it, right?
Mm-mm.
Or I can have rigid boundaries, which is like a jail wall around my house,
Yeah.
right? Whatever's on the inside isn't getting out, whatever's on the outside isn't getting in, right? I'm
Hmm.
really rigid with who I let in and who I let out.
Yeah.
But a healthy boundary is like a 10-foot tall, sturdy wood fence with a door and a latch on the inside. I get to choose when I let people more in and when I don't, when I have to be a little bit more strict, right? That's the
Yep.
only one that's not based out of fear. So
Yes.
when the receiving end of someone living with borderline personality disorder, right? You're constantly either feeling like I have to figure out how to have rigid boundaries or I have to figure out or I'm just gonna be have porous boundaries, right?
Yeah.
I can't have boundaries because if I do, then they threaten to kill themselves or they self-harm,
Yeah.
right? And it's hard.
Oh, it's so hard. And it's hard to a lesser degree than the family. It is difficult
Mhm.
sometimes to treat folks with borderline personality disorder for the
Mhm.
same reason.
Mhm.
I want to talk about the fact that I feel suicidal, but the minute that you try to do an intervention that's helpful,
Mhm.
I'm going to push away and I'm going to be angry with you, or I'm going to stop talking, or I'm going to get super vague. So it's
Mhm.
really hard to know how to interact with some of those things,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. At times, their life lacks meaning and can feel chronically empty all of the time. Like
Mm,
they're in this dark tunnel. And I think that's the piece when I was researching. I mean, I could sit here and read the DSM criteria, right?
oh,
But let's
totally.
be
Yeah.
real, like people can look that up.
Everyone can Google.
You can Google it's literally right there, right? But I think
Yeah.
the reason why I took the take that I did was because of how they feel.
Mm.
But on the receiving end, when you're in a relationship with someone like that, you don't, it's hard to empathize with
Oh,
them
yeah. Because the behavior is nonsense.
because the behavior is so harmful,
Oh, yeah.
right? So that's what I keep circling back to is I just can't even imagine, right? I lost a sister-in-law to this disease.
Mm.
And I will tell you, I don't know if this is kosher or not, but I'm going to full send here. I will tell you, I knew her for years, right? She was in our lives for years,
Mm.
and she did end up dying by suicide.
But she was really suffering.
She was suffering so badly for
Mm.
so long.
Mm.
And it was my sibling, my oldest sibling,
Mm.
who was married to her, and they both suffered,
Mm.
and the last thing he wanted was for this to happen, of course,
Oh, yeah.
right? But yeah, so it's just when you think of just the chaos that's going on in their brain,
Oh, it's
there's
so
no
hard.
off switch. And the hard thing is there's medication that can maybe help some of the symptoms, right?
Yeah.
Maybe quiet it,
Yeah.
but there's no actual medication that is like, here, this is strictly for borderline personality disorder.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a cocktail, which you and I both know, especially with different diagnoses, can either like make it a little better or make it way worse.
Totally. And there is, they've done a lot of research on treatment for borderline. They're coming out with stuff all the time. Dialectic behavior therapy is really the number one.
Mm-hmm.
For folks with borderline, it teaches emotional regulation skills, mindfulness, communication. It's just a great tool if someone will
Yeah.
engage with it. It's
Yeah.
super helpful. We actually run DBT groups
Yeah.
where we are because it's so valuable whether you have borderline or not. It's great for anything really. It's actually just good skills for life. It's just especially helpful if you have borderline personality disorder.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, what do you think are some of the best depictions of borderline in media?
Mhm.
Like just fictional characters.
Oh shoot, what's her name? Joker's girlfriend,
Oh, Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn.
Yeah, for sure.
She popped up. I don't know her story very well. I need to like watch more of things with
Were
her in
you
it.
her for Halloween one year?
No, I want to be her.
I
I love
just
her.
gave you an idea. I know someone who went as her for Halloween, which was
Yeah, it wasn't me.
crazy.
I don't do Halloween. That's not my
That's
thing.
true. I don't do Halloween really either.
Yeah. I'll like maybe put on like a sweatshirt that could maybe I could like pull off being a cat or something. Put some
Like
ears
just a
on.
headband and
Yeah,
smile.
literally. I'll put like ears on that cost me $2 and then a sweatshirt.
One of the scariest, and I like talking about fictional characters because I think we can talk about the behavior and it doesn't feel quite as sad because it's not a real human being. But when you think about Angelina Jolie's character in Girl
Mhm.
Interrupted,
Yes, that movie's
oh
insane.
my gosh. I mean, it is scary. That's a very scary depiction of borderline.
And that's like, I don't think that's like a lot of individuals who have borderline. Like
That
that's,
is a severity that would be inpatient psych
yes,
mental health, like the most severe.
that's like on a scale from 0 to 10, like 0 is like,
Hmm.
still symptomatic for borderline, still obviously
Hmm.
diagnosed. That's a 10.
Well, that is someone with this disorder. We talk so much about people with antisocial personality disorder who sometimes cannot
Mm-hmm.
live among people.
Mm-hmm.
People at the very outer scale of borderline also have a really hard time in the community
Mm-hmm.
because they're just not stable enough.
Right.
and they're so destructive in relationships, and they can become obsessed in terms of stalking and some of that kind of
Mhm.
stuff too. So they actually do sometimes end up in the criminal justice system because of these kind of
Oh
behaviors.
yeah. Oh
So,
yeah.
and they're part of the same cluster.
Hmm.
So there can be overlap with some of these different personality disorders that we're going to talk about.
Yep.
I also think, have you seen the movie The Roommate? It's a newer one with Minka Kelly.
I don't think so.
That is one of the most accurate. I mean, it's again an extreme.
Okay.
It's a little bit of
It
a
has to be extreme in the
because it's
movie.
a movie, but I will tell you the part that is so true is her wanting to almost become her roommate. Like she just
Mm.
loves her. She becomes really obsessive with
Hmm.
her friend and roommate and just wants to kind of be her.
I'm gonna have to watch this. Maybe I'll make my
I want to
in-
watch it with you.
well, I might make my in-laws watch it with me in Zion. That guy Cam get I don't know how to say his last name
Yeah.
Gigantic. He's in like every significant effed up movie that I see.
Really?
I feel like he is. He's like always in these like crazy screwed up movies.
Well, this one is like a chef's kiss scary movie because it is sort of believable. It's an extreme caricature version of
Hmm.
the identity loss that happens in borderline personality disorder.
Yeah.
Like if somebody had the worst there ever was camped out really in that one symptom, primarily, a little bit of self-harm too, I think in there, but that just not having an identity
Hmm.
and trying to kind of merge with another person, that's a great example of that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I'll have to watch this. Sorry, I'm now obsessed, not obsessed, but I'm down the rabbit hole of Cam, whatever his last name is. If you look at the movies he's in, every single one of them are intense. The only ones that aren't, maybe are Bad Johnson, which I don't know what that's about. I don't want to know. And Twilight, but he was one of the bad guys in Twilight.
He is kind of intense.
And anyway, yeah. Or what's that one that's so popular where she boiled the bunny?
Fatal Attraction.
Yeah, that one's insane.
Oh my gosh. When I was working the group practice that I owned for years, we had a movie night and we watched Fatal Attraction.
Mm-hmm.
Wild. It's a
Yeah,
wild movie.
yeah. I don't. It makes me wildly uncomfortable.
Well, it's a caricature again, right, of
Mm-hmm.
borderline, but
Mm-hmm.
that obsessive nature of it, that is a symptom of borderline personality disorder. Like it can happen. It's just not usually on that scale.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to know the spectrum, right? Like sometimes these individuals can look a little more on the normal side,
Mhm.
um, and operate in a somewhat normal way. And then also we have the movies that depict kind of the 10 side of it.
So let's run a scenario.
Okay.
Okay. You're gonna be my consultant for this.
Okay.
If you're a college freshman, you move into your dorm, you meet your roommate, she's like, "Oh my God, I love you," immediately, right? And you like each other a lot. You're having fun, they're funny, you like all the same things, which is wild.
Mm-hmm.
And you're having the time of your life. And then you start to realize that she gets a little pissy.
Mm-hmm.
You're spending time with other people. Maybe you get a boyfriend and that's upsetting, right? And now this person is really starting to show some different sides of their personality. They're getting frustrated. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they're being a little bit more dramatic than normal. Maybe they're saying things like, "I'm so depressed. I just need your support right now," and really taking all of that time, which again is not a problem in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
What advice do you give that college girl whose roommate is starting to glom onto her? What should she do?
Run.
Run, run.
That's
Just
what I would do.
run.
I would have run the second she came in and was like, "Hi." I'd be like, "Nope,
Well,
all right."
I will say, you are not someone to be trifled with. Like
Mm-mm.
If you have borderline personality disorder, Natalie is Teflon. Like she is so independent. She's just like, nope, nope, nope.
Anytime I feel like someone is leeching on or
Oh,
on, I'm like, I will like immediately, nope, I'm out.
okay. So
I would tell, I would tell her to run.
maybe that's black cat stuff because what happens to the golden retriever is we
Mhm.
like run and play and everything's great. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, you're different than I thought you were.
Not
Or they
you.
get really mad and you're just like, whoa, back up, right? Like all of a sudden out of nowhere. Some of the biggest fights I've actually had with friends have been people who are kind of maybe on this spectrum a little bit. And
Mhm.
I'm just like bebopping along, living my life with them, having so much fun because I'm fairly independent. So I have a lot of people in my life.
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden it's like this
big.
person gets offended or they don't feel like they're the favorite or something weird happens and it is like on.
Oh, it's wild.
Oh, and then I'm highly stressed and I go into hiding
Yes.
for a little while and then I come back
Yes.
out and find new friends. It's just a little bit, just
Yes.
happens.
Yeah.
So you would tell her run.
Well, I would tell, okay, so
'Cause
in
that may
reality,
not be an option. So what do we really do?
so if she came to me and she's like, "Hey, I have
Mhm.
this friend and things are getting a little weird,"
Mhm.
I would say, "Okay, we need to start setting boundaries,
Mhm.
right? Who are your other friends? What other things are you involved in that you can engage in? Find other people, have a balance so that this
Yeah,
one person doesn't become your one friend."
absolutely.
Right. So help them through what boundaries look like, what it means to have a community of people.
Yes.
Right.
And you can love someone who has borderline personality disorder well. You
Hmm.
can love them well. Also, sometimes there's seasons to relationships and they need to end.
Yeah.
And so only you know where that line is, but sometimes you have to end it. And Melody Beattie, she wrote Codependent No More.
Hmm.
And I love her work so much. And one of the things she says is detach in love if you can. But if you must, detach in anger.
Yeah.
Meaning sometimes we have to use our healthy, normal, angry response to bad behavior to get out of a situation that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
Now, what happens if
Right.
you're the roommate who is feeling like they're losing their best friend all of a sudden because things are changing and they don't know why?
Hmm.
That person needs a therapist, for one thing.
Well, yeah. I was going to say, I feel like you just have to tell
Mhm.
them, hey, I think you need to go see the school counselors and get set up, you know?
Well, and I'm going to tell you something, and I don't normally do this, but I'm just going to, as Nat would say, full send for the
Full
second time
send.
tonight. Here's what we're doing. Call this person's bluff every time.
Hmm.
If they are suicidal, you drop their happy ass off in the ER every single
Yes,
time. Here's
absolutely.
the reason. Number one,
I tell everybody that when they tell me their friends are, threatening suicide, I'm like, you call the police, you call the ambulance, and you get their happy ass picked up.
we don't keep secrets.
Nope,
I'm not going to sit here with you all night and kibitz
nope,
about this.
yep,
You're getting help,
yep.
right? And
Hmm.
so the reason that we do that is because that's what sane, rational people do. Why would you not?
Yes.
But the expectation of codependency is pretty high in these relationships. And so it's
Yep.
really important to keep that in mind. Do
Yep.
the safe thing, but also do the thing that makes sense. Because if everything feels topsy-turvy,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably in a relationship that's unhealthy and might involve a personality disorder.
Yeah.
Remember did you ever watch oh, what was that show? The OC?
Yes.
Okay, remember when what's her bucket?
Marissa.
Marissa, when she became friends with that really rich kid at the new school and he got all crazy and kept her in a room and he had a gun and he was like he kind of lost it there for a minute.
Yeah, I'd have to watch it again, but vaguely.
Yeah, that was a depiction of borderline where there was like this perceived ownership of the relationship. There was distance in the
Yeah.
relationship. There was targeting of someone who was a threat.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at and people that we've talked about in some of our cases too,
Hmm.
if someone is super threatened that you have relationships with other people, if they kind of feel like they own you,
Mm-hmm.
There's some dysfunction there. That's not like a normal thing that we feel.
Yeah.
It's normal to have preference, like to have people that you prefer more than other people. That's all normal.
Yeah.
But if somebody's trying to own you, that there's maybe something else happening there.
Yes. Well, and that's part of it, right? That's their fear of abandonment.
Hmm.
They threaten to hurt you. They threaten, most of the time they threaten suicide.
Hmm.
Sometimes they attempt it, right?
Yes.
Most of the time in a way that's not necessarily 100% lethal.
Mhm.
Um, but they do that because of that fear of abandonment.
Yes.
And so, I mean, the OC scene, right? I don't fully
Yes.
remember, but I'm picturing it, and it's
Oh,
like,
fear of abandonment for
yeah,
sure.
she probably was setting some boundaries, or she was
Yes.
back with Ryan, or whatever the situation was,
Hmm.
and he was losing his new friend and
Yes.
lost.
Well, and this is where this hits up against DV
Mm-hmm.
because some of the most violent domestic violence offenders I've ever treated were males who actually had an underlying borderline personality disorder
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis that was overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have emotional regulation skills. They're struggling. They're feeling everything.
Mm-hmm.
People are starting to meddle in their relationship. One of the things I'll hear is, well, that's the friend, their friend. They have this friend. They have this friend that is telling them to leave me. And this friend filled out the police report. And this friend, blah, 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 blah. Like there's a fixation
Yeah.
on another person or another man or the parents. Like there's a fixation on whoever else is in this person's life.
Yeah.
That's usually a sign. And those folks can be violent, be very violent without treatment. So that's one to keep an eye on for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And the target is typically, like you said, sometimes themselves,
Mm-hmm.
but it can also be the person that they perceive was the threat to the relative.
Mm-hmm.
Because if
Oh,
they can
yeah.
sometimes
Yep.
get delusional and a little bit paranoid, like
Yeah.
it can shift into that. So
Yeah. I have a case I'm gonna give you. Not
you have
right.
a case,
I do.
but not tonight for
Oh
another
no.
day.
I would have to go. I need to go look at it again. It was a long time ago.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, anything else you want to say on borderline?
No, I think my biggest piece of it I've said a few times, which is, like for people to stop saying that every difficult woman has borderline and actually understand what this looks like. And even if you have to angrily detach or
Yes.
kind of detach, it's still important to have empathy for their
Yes.
experience as well, right? It doesn't mean we don't keep ourselves safe. That's, those two things are separate things, right? I can keep myself
Yeah.
safe and also still have empathy for their.
Absolutely.
So that's my biggest thing. Any last thoughts from you?
No, I appreciate the empathy plus the boundaries because I think only empathy when you're dealing with somebody with this disorder is going to get you twisted up in knots.
Yeah, it's enabling.
Only boundaries, you're not going to have a relationship with this person for very long. So that's fine if you're dating or you were friends for 5 seconds. But if it's your sister, if it's your mom, if it's your daughter, I mean, there are relationships that you want to maintain with people that you love who might be suffering from this. So both are important. And we might be able to post just some books and resources and get your own therapist if you're trying to support somebody who has this disorder. Or if you think you might have it, I actually have had one or two clients who've come and they've said, I just can't seem to establish relationships. And I read about this thing and we can talk about it, you
Mhm.
know? But either way, get some help with a neutral person who can sit with you and help you brainstorm and problem
Yep.
solve.
Yeah. I will say the individuals that I've worked with who know that they're diagnosed with that tend to do better.
They manage it better,
They manage it better because they're aware.
which is really kind of interesting because I think the field shies away from diagnosing it.
Yes. And I actually don't agree with that
I
mindset.
don't either. And you know what? Even as you're saying that, Nat, you're 100% right. The people that I work with who know this is something they struggle with manage it better than the people
Yep.
who don't.
Yep. I actually think we're doing them a disservice if we don't kindly,
Hmm.
timely
Yeah.
respectfully tell them and go through some of
Mhm.
these symptoms with them.
I mean, I agree with that. Even if it's not a full-blown diagnosis, but just to say,
Exactly.
hey, some people struggle with this.
Yeah.
Does this sound like something you would struggle with?
But honestly, here's the thing, and I'm like 99.9% sure I don't have borderline.
Right.
However, to me, like what you were saying earlier about like medical diagnoses, like I don't want to go to a doctor and they don't want to give me the hard news just because it's hard news.
So true.
Right. Same thing with my mental health. I don't want to go to a doctor and they're like, well, we got to lessen the blow because this one's a hard one. No,
Right.
I want to know because I want to know how to manage my life.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I
So,
really do agree with that. I think sharing that news compassionately and with hope is
mhm.
so important. Like you can't hand that over and go, yeah, it's untreatable and you're not likely to improve. First of all, it's not true. But second of all, that's awful. Like
Right.
I don't think we need to hand it over like a life sentence, but I do think being honest that they're going to have to battle this and deal with this as a chronic condition and probably be in therapy for a very long time, if not for their whole life, for balance in their
Right.
perspective.
Well, and I'm gonna quickly bring it back to my sister-in-law. She was misdiagnosed
Hmm.
and she was treated for bipolar. Therefore,
Mm-hmm.
medication was recommended, but therapy was like, give or take, right? And so I think if she would have been diagnosed properly, there could have been a different outcome for everybody,
She
right?
might
And
have had a trusted therapist that she worked with.
yeah, and I think she would have been capable of that,
Mm,
right? I think that's the piece is sometimes we're so scared to tell someone that stuff when in reality, I mean, shoot, if they fire me because I said, "Hey, let's go through these symptoms and talk through it," I would rather have them do that than
lose someone.
lose someone or the other chance of them being like, "Oh my gosh," like so there's hope for me even though I have, even though I have borderline.
Mm. And there's an explanation for these
Yes.
experiences that I've had. I'm not bad.
Yes, I'm not crazy.
I'm not crazy. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah,
And so when you can present it to someone, like, if someone went to my sister-in-law and said, "Hey, based on your experiences, based on all this stuff, you make sense to me.
totally. Yeah.
You make sense to me. And hey, let's stick this out. Let's build some trust so that when these things flare up, we can manage this together." That is so much better than just wandering your life
Yeah.
around not knowing what's going on in your brain. That sounds
Oh,
amazing.
I love that.
So anyway, I'm passionate about it because of my personal experience of family, but I think, you and I have both met some really amazing humans
We
who've
have.
been diagnosed with this and when they know, they thrive.
Yeah, they can.
So,
And they can get a sense of humor about it, which I love. If you get a little
yeah.
bit of self-awareness,
Mhm.
you can kind of chuckle. I've had people tell me before, like, I am just piping hot mad right now, and I know I probably shouldn't be. So what is going on? And we'll sit and we'll talk about it, right?
Yes, and it's okay. And we
Imagine
can
that.
sit there and say, "Hey, that's okay. Your brain's on fire right now."
Absolutely. Let's cool it off
Yes,
and make
let's
good choices.
let's use DBT skills and
That's right. Oh,
man.
I love this. Well, thanks for joining us, you guys.
And as always,
Bye, forensic friends. I'm Janine.
and I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.